Good evening YouTube, what's cracking off? Asmid here, and today I'm going to bring you the first in my series of videos on faction guides for Total War Warhammer 2. Today we'll be starting off with the Dark Elves, in particular Lokhir Fellheart. Now before we get started, I just want to let you know how I'm going to be going about doing this. So I'm going to be scoring each faction / legendary lord based on 4 categories out of 5. So those 4 categories include the faction attributes, which is basically the mechanics of the faction and what boosts it provides. And then there's martial prowess for the leader, so how competent is that legendary lord in battle. Then we're going to do commandability, which is how competent that legendary lord is in commanding his army. And finally we'll be looking at faction buffs, which is basically what that legendary lord provides to the rest of his faction. So let's get started then with faction attributes. So Lokhir Fellheart has a bit of a precarious starting off position as it is right in Lustria. Now Lustria, it may look a bit intimidating to start off with, especially for newer players, but it's not as bad as it seems. First of all, he's got the suitability climate to help him. So he has got the suitable climate with jungle, so if he does want to colonise all those places in the heart of Lustria, he shouldn't have too many problems doing so. He's also got the access to some pretty good right, well, one good right in the form of the sacrificed anathema. So this is 400 slaves, which is quite expensive, but it can be reduced. We'll talk about that later. So the sacrificed anathema, it basically, for 5 turns, it gives you the ability to have extra movement and extra income from sacking and raising. Now the sacking is in particular good because in that 5 turns you can sack a settlement 5 times. Try saying that 5 times faster. Anyway, you can sack a settlement 5 times for 5 turns. And get a lot of money from it through this right. And then obviously you get the Black Art growth plus 10 as well, which is relatively useful because you want to get those bad boys as high a level as you can, as soon as possible as well. In terms of the actual faction attributes for the Blessed Dread itself, the Menace of Mathan provides these. So as I mentioned in the race guide, the Dark Elves, they focus on 2 main things: the ability to accumulate loads of slaves and make lots of money from them, and the ability to have these really good sources of recruitment and heroes in the form of Black Arcs. Now Lokhir Fellheart's faction boosts both of them. So first of all, income from slave pens and slave markets is increased by 50%. That's an absolutely amazing trait, which means you'll be able to get loads of dosh a lot quicker and be able to start capitalising on that. Next, you've got every owned major port will allow the recruitment of a Black Art. So basically every major settlement you own on the coast, that's how many Black Arts you're able to have. And just around the coast of Lustria itself, there are at least 3 or 4. So you'll be able to get, at least by the mid game, let's say about turn 70, turn 60, you should be able to have yourself at least 5 Black Arcs, which is pretty impressive. So based on that, I'm going to be giving Lokhir Fellheart a ranking of 5 out of 5 for faction attributes. This may be a bit of a surprise to some people, but I just genuinely think that the key mechanics of the Dark Elves and the key mechanics of the Blessed Dread work together really, really well, which is why I'm giving it that. Moving on to martial prowess now. So Lokhir Fellheart, before we actually look at his skills, he's got some amazing base stats. I mean, 110 armor is great. He's got ridiculous weapon strength at 450, 1/3 of that being armor piercing, just over 1/3 actually, so it's pretty decent. Moving on to his skills, he's got some decent items. So the Red Blades gives himself plus 10 melee attack, an extra 15% weapon strength, and then also makes him do sundering attacks. Helm of the Kraken, his second item, again a really good item, gives him extra armor and makes him cause terror. However, it also gives him regeneration constantly and melee defense every time he's in combat. Melee combat, that is. He's also got Ahead of the Tide as well, which gives him charge bonus plus 15 and weapon strength 10%. And obviously don't forget Maelstrom, which is a Black Dragon mount. A very powerful mount. I think based on that, I'm going to give Lokhir Fellheart a martial prowess ranking of 5 out of 5. So moving on to commandability then. Now he's got a very good trait in the form of Kraken Lord. So well, I say very good. It's pretty good. It's decent. It reduces upkeep costs for Black Ark Corsairs by 50% and makes them all cause fear, and gives his army immunity to high seas, reef, and storm attrition. Now the sea attrition is a bit meh, but regarding the Black Ark Corsairs, now they're not the best unit, and if I was any other faction, I probably wouldn't recruit them. But for Lokhir Fellheart's Blessed Dread, he does buff them quite considerably. So that's the first buff he applies. If we then go down to Corsair Nobles, he gives them all in his army plus 100% missile damage, and gives them all plus 8 leadership and melee attack for all Corsairs, the melee and the handbow version. And then he's got Slaver. He's got Ahead of the Tide first, which makes them all allows all Black Ark Corsair units to be Vanguard deployed and have Stalk, which is really good because the enemy won't even know you're there until you're right next to them, ready to empty a load of crossbows into their faces. And then finally you got Slaver, which reduces the upkeep cost by 5% for all units. Actually, you've also got Patriarch of the Fellhearts, which gives you a plus 8 melee attack when fighting at sea. So based on that, I'm going to give Lokhir Fellheart a commandability ranking of 3 out of 5, because what he does, the amount he boosts them by is absolutely incredible, but what he's boosting isn't the best unit. It's good in the early game, and the boosts make it pretty deadly in the early game, but apart from that, I wouldn't invest much else into it. So based on that, I'm giving him a 3 out of 5. So moving on to the faction buffs of Lokhir Fellheart now. This is all about what he provides, or what buffs he provides to his faction, just him alone, not actually any of his mechanics for the Blessed Dread. So he doesn't provide much, but what he does provide is actually excellent. So let's get started then. Bonded by Blood, it gives him Public Order plus 5 in the local province he's in. And then it gives him also plus 1 loyalty for all new recruits faction wide. That's always useful because loyalty can be a bit annoying. However, this second one, it's worded a bit weirdly, but what that means is, as long as Lokhir Fellheart is in his own territory, then faction-wide you have a plus 5 untainted applied. So I know it's worded weirdly, but that's the meaning of that. It's okay, it's decent, it's nothing that powerful. Sometimes you find yourself flooded with Chaos Corruption, Vampiric Corruption, or even Skaven Corruption. That can be handy, but not all the time. So then you've got Master of the Blessed Dread. So this is a good ability that Lokhir can get. It increases the Black Ark growth plus 5 faction wide. Really good because you want to get those Black Arks max level as soon as possible. Increases income from all ports by 5% as well. All regions, so faction wide, again, as decent trait to boost your income even further. He's got the Slaver skill, which increases the casualties captured post battle by 12%. Again, pretty helpful. Works well with the slave mechanic. And finally, you've got Patriarch of the Fellhearts. Now this is the really good one. So it reduces the slave cost by 75% for the sacrifice to Anathema, which I mentioned earlier, and all that does is basically allow you to spend 100 slaves to get those buffs from Anathema, which are actually pretty decent. So that's definitely worthwhile. So that plus 5 recruit rank then. So the plus 5 recruit rank is actually the crux of this skill, because it allows you, well, it massively reduces the gap it takes for you to recruit a lord and get it to a revered martial or aristocratic name of power. As I said, names of power are really good, so getting that plus 5 recruit rank really helps in that regard. So based on that, and especially based on Patriarch of the Fellhearts and how useful it can be, I'm giving Lokhir Fellheart a ranking of 4 out of 5 for faction buffs. Thank you all for watching my video on Lokhir Fellheart, my personal favourite legendary lord. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave a comment and subscribe. I'd very much appreciate it. If you disagree or you didn't like it, then again, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll try and get back to you. Thank you all again. Peace out.